448-page reports, introductions, and executive summaries, and made some initial suggested redactions for doing so. Mueller wrote that the redaction process need not delay the release of enclosed materials. Release at this time would alleviate the misunderstandings that have arisen and would answer congressional and public questions about the nature and the outcome of our investigation. Wow. Mueller's letter was sent on March 27th. That's the same week as Barr's summary. And a day after the letter was sent, Barr and Mueller spoke by phone, just to make things a little bit more clear, for about 15 minutes, in which the Post reports Mueller expressed his concern. Yet, in testimony to the House and Senate, the Attorney General said he was unaware of Mueller's objections.
Reports have emerged recently, General, that members of the special counsel's team are frustrated at some level with the limited information included in your March 24th letter, that it does not adequately or accurately necessarily portray the report's findings. Do you know what they're referencing with that?
No, I don't. I suspect that they probably wanted, more put out.
Did Bob Mueller support your conclusion?
I don't know whether Bob Mueller supported my conclusion.
I mean,
wow.
It's pretty shocking. So Robert Costa, you broke the news yesterday, and it is incredible. The line that I keep going back to is a line where Mueller tells Barr that the incompleteness, the mischaracterizations in his report sowed confusion and, quote, threatens to undermine the central purpose of the Justice Department appointing the special counsel. I take it from your reporting that was a feeling, a widespread feeling throughout the special counsel's office?
My colleagues at the Post, Devlin Barrett and Matt Zapotosky, broke the story, but if you read the report that they put out last night and you read the Post subsequent reporting, it becomes clear that many people within the Robert Mueller orbit were growing increasingly frustrated in communicating that to Mr. Mueller, who had his own concerns that he articulated in that letter. And talking to Adam Schiff, the House Intelligence Committee chairman yesterday, Senator Richard Blumenthal, and other top Democrats, there's an immediate desire to get Robert Mueller to come testify publicly, to have him come to Capitol Hill before House Judiciary, Senate Judiciary, House Intel, Senate Intel, and tell his version of how this all played out. Not only the report, but the handling of the report. And also from Senator Blumenthal and some of my top Democratic sources who are staffers, there's beginning to be a clamor, private for now mostly, should the Attorney General be part of any kind of discussion with regard to impeachment. It's not reached a threshold yet where the leadership is talking about it, but certainly rank and file Democrats are having those conversations behind the scenes.
Chuck, in some ways it's not surprising that Bob Mueller had sent a letter to William Barr, because we did have those reports, as referenced by Senator Kritz there from the Washington Post and the New York Times, that other members of the special counsel team had complaints about the presentation made in the 4-page summary by Attorney General Barr. But as you see the details of what Robert Mueller was actually complaining about to Barr, what's your takeaway?
Well, it's not surprising in some ways, and it is in others, Willie. Let me explain. It's not often in the Department of Justice that we go to paper, that we commit in writing our disagreements or our disappointments, particularly with our boss, right? And so only when you really feel that there has been sort of a misdeed or a misdirection, would you go to paper. So the fact that Bob Mueller wrote a letter, right, which he must have known would become public someday, to the sitting Attorney General, to his boss, Mueller's a subordinate, is kind of remarkable to me. When we have disagreements, and that happens all the time, how do you typically resolve them? You pick up the phone and you make a call. And maybe Mueller thought that would not be sufficient here, that he had to make a record for history.
You know, Chuck, I'm glad to hear you say that. Last night, Mika and I were talking as this news was breaking. I found it extraordinary that he had reduced his concerns to writing and was telling Mika that that's, as a practicing lawyer, whether you're in criminal or civil, that's something that you learn to do. You sometimes write letters for the file. You sometimes write letters knowing that in writing that letter, you are actually leaving the person who's the recipient of the letter no choice to respond, because you've just opened them up to claims of negligence if they don't make corrective actions.
But he just run it over.
But in this case, as you said, for Robert Mueller to write a letter to a guy who's been a friend for a very long time, whose wives are friends, who, as you said, is his supervisor, for those that said Robert Mueller did not do enough to complain, in this world, is that not an extraordinary action for him to take, where he put it there? And as I often said in Congress to my staff members, when you write a certain type of letter and put it on somebody's desk, it is a ticking time bomb that they must respond to. Is that not the effect of this letter?
Yeah, it is extraordinary, Joe, and I think your reaction is spot on. Look, the way we were brought up in the Department of Justice culture is that we're one family, and you don't want to put other members of the family in a box. And so you try very hard to work things out in a reasonable way, and often face-to-face or over the phone. When things get bad, and apparently they did, you put it in writing. And so it does land, with a thud on Bill Barr's desk, and he has to respond, perhaps not in writing, but maybe today when he testifies. So it's a very unusual turn of events, and I don't believe for a minute, having worked for Bob Mueller, that this is something that he would have done lightly.
Could you agree that Volume 2 of the Mueller report lays out at least 10 pretty good examples of potential obstruction of justice?
Yes, although I take one word out, potential.
Okay.
It is an extraordinarily compelling volume. Those 10 episodes of obstruction are in and of themselves deeply disturbing. I was a federal prosecutor for a long time, Mike, and I've brought cases in federal court and obtained convictions on just a fraction of the evidence that Mueller details.
Would you agree that in Volume 2, again, that the Mueller report indicates quite strongly and clearly that the reason they can't go forward with an indictment of the President of the United States is because of Justice Department policy?
Yeah, 100%. So the policy is that you can't charge a sitting president. The rationale is that doing so would stigmatize the president and burden the presidency. If you adhere to that rationale, then neither can you charge a sitting president, because that too would stigmatize the presidency and burden the president.
So given that assessment from you, would you agree with the supposition that based upon what Bill Barr has said publicly, that both he and the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, Rod Rosenstein, have at a minimum trimmed the truth?
Yeah, Joe used two verbs before, misled and lied, and they're different, right? I mean, everybody who lies misleads, but not everyone who misleads lies. And I don't know where on that spectrum this stuff fits, but the Attorney General is better than that. He should neither mislead nor lie. He should adhere to the spirit of this and not to the letter of this. And that's what bothers me. We need more from our public leaders. We need more from the Department of Justice, and that's painful.
So, Joe, and to what Chuck just said, misleading, lying, where is it in between?
Right.
What is clear? This letter was received, this phone call happened, and there was a difference in opinion as to what was released to the American public and told to Congress. And I think the intention and the fact that this was purposeful on the part of the Attorney General is very clear.
Well, yeah, I'm glad I am not in law school right now, because I am sure that people are going to be given assignments, given the Attorney General's statement before the Senate when he's testifying to Chris Van Hollen, and then, of course, the statement, the Charlie Crist statement, and then they're going to be asked to determine whether it's perjury or not. Actually, every day. I'm glad I'm not in law school anymore. But Chuck does bring up a good point. There is a spectrum there between misleading and lying, and then perjury. I've got to say, though, you look, Tom Nichols,